Hello and welcome to the Wolves Report. I'm Ryan Leicester and thank you for joining us for episode 60. Tonight we're going to analyse the Brentford game in depth, talk about Ruben Neves as every other question on the timeline relating to the podcast has been about Ruben Neves, take your questions other than about Ruben Neves and look ahead to Leicester. Of course, I can't do this by myself. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by my two midfield generals in the form of Nocky and Tyler. And tonight we are delighted to be joined by Mirror Football's Ben Husband. Good evening, gentlemen. Start things flying straight away with you, Ben. Just your initial take on Wolverhampton Wanderers 2, Brentford 0.
Yeah, so, there might be a bit of debating. I thought that was the best Wolves performance under Lopetegui. I thought that was better than Liverpool. Just because for the first time that I can remember, they just controlled the game. Just completely control. And Brentford are a proper team as well. And they made Brentford look quite poor. I know they're not in the best run of form, but I just thought Wolves controlled the game. I thought they harried them, they pressed them. The things that I was really concerned Brentford would do to us, I thought we did to them. And it won't get spoken about a lot because the goals were quite fortunate in the way they came. I thought Wolves, even when they were 1-0 up, I wasn't overly concerned that Brentford were going to get back into it, whereas against Liverpool, there was that phase after half-time where it was backs to the wall.
Tucked in, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Chelsea was solid, but they never felt particularly in control of the game. They was always sort of managing it, whereas I just thought Wolves if you looked at those two teams, then Wolves are just a better Premier League team than Brentford. And there hasn't been that many occasions this season, really, when we've actually said that. We can probably go through them now. There's maybe like 2 or 3 games this year where you've gone, yeah, the better team won, and that was Wolves.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It was a complete performance. It probably hasn't come with the affection of the Chelsea win, Tyler, because it was Chelsea. But as Ben said, Brentford are a proper team. And for me, the team that are most capable of the dark arts, the physical side of the game, there's never an easy game against Brentford. They're hard to play against. And other than Kane, one of the most complete number 9s in the Premier League was nullified by a solid Wolves team.
Yeah, I agree with Ben. I think it probably was the best, wasn't it? It was the control element that was really enjoyable. But the goals were, fortuitous as well. Ben's right with the deflections, but the build-up on both was superb. The first goal, sweeping it from back to front, I don't think I've seen that under the sort of Jota Jimenez days at Nuno, where it was, real attacking, pacey move. Lamina was busting his gut to get in the box. And when did we last see midfielder do that? He just had, calm and collected performance, really. And what else was pleasing, I think someone made a good point, that when the decision didn't go our way, we didn't lose our heads and go bonkers. We kept calm. We got the second goal. We won it comfortably. I think the only person who thought, Brentford was a better team was Thomas Frank, wasn't it, ultimately, for what he was saying. But, anyone who watched that game, you'd think Wolves were the established sort of top half team fighting for Europe, and you'd think Brentford were the ones sort of in a bit of a pickle. But, just echo what Ben said, controlled, really, from start to finish. And when we turned it on, Brentford couldn't live with us, really, could they?
Nocky, as both Ben and Tyler have said, it wasn't just an energetic pressing performance. It was a controlled, measured performance. There's a team, again, full of 7 out of 10 performers, maybe one that you don't think was that, but a team that all played good football and looked like a team going places again.
I thought we were excellent. I completely echo what the lads have said. We've had good 45 minutes this season. We've had good spells, good periods, but we've not been in control of a game for 90 minutes, I'd say, under Lopetegui. I mean, the Spurs game, they were all over us first half. Liverpool came out of second half, but this was a really good, solid performance. I think the difference for me is that Costa looks really fit, and he was a focal point for us up front. And where Brentford come and bullied us last season, I felt that he bullied their back line. He didn't give them a minute. He made it really awkward for them. And defensively, Kilman and Dawson really bullied Ivan Toney and Mbeumo, 2 players who hurt us last year. So it was a really, really good display. I was really pleased with it. And the goals were a little bit fortunate, but we got players in the box, which is something that we don't always do. And I think everyone was delighted to see Costa score because, who he is. We all wanted to see a Costa goal before he leaves us. But it was just an all-round really, really good performance. I think we thoroughly deserved the win. And when you see us play like that, with that kind of work rate and intelligence and just the way we controlled the game. You wonder how we've ended up in this position in the first place, because we should be a lot higher up the league with that level of quality that we clearly possess. And I think the formation worked really well. I think from the wide positions we hurt them. I don't think Cunha was at his best, but he was still affecting the game. And the midfield, Lamina and João Gomez, absolutely phenomenal for me. I thought they really controlled it. And then Nunes himself, he was a little bit quiet. I don't think it was his best game. And then suddenly he bursts into life, breaks down the right-hand side, sets up the second goal. So we look like we've got match winners in the team now, which we haven't had all season. So yeah, really, really pleased with that. Thoroughly enjoyed that game.
You're watching episode 60 of the Wolves Report with Mirror Football's Ben Husband, Chris Tyler, Mark Knock, and myself, Ryan Leicester. And the Wolves Report is now available on Spotify. So those, if you're annoyed of watching Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, you can now get this on Spotify as well at the Wolves Report. Ben, fortune favours the brave, and you make your own luck in football. Yes, the goals were fortunate, but Wolves are getting themselves into positions on a more regular basis than they have done in a long time.
Yeah, so I thought, I know Knock just mentioned Cunha. I thought what he also did is what we haven't seen probably since Jota left, and that was so the chance where he probably should have squared it for Gomez. We actually had a player running beyond defenders, and that flick was on. I can't remember the last time that ball's been on for a player, and because I know Costa's a different sort of player, but if you think of the amount of times that like Jimenez has held the ball up and there's never been a run off him, because it's not particularly Traore's game. Neto's been sort of in and out of the squad. It's not particularly his game. And we haven't had that kind of 10, which, you know, a player in the similar mould to Jota, I would say, Cunha, that makes those type of runs. Still don't think he's making sort of the right decisions, but teams are having to contend with that movement, which Wolves have been so static. It's pretty much since Jota left. It's not a coincidence that Wolves were significantly worse when he left, because they were much easier to defend, because they didn't have that player that picks up pockets and
more
gets
static
defenders. Yeah, you had two good wingers and a good centre forward in Jimenez. They didn't have that extra thing that could just pop up somewhere where the defender doesn't expect, and that's what I think Cunha's got. So I get that there's not the final product particularly there yet, but I see like the movement and of what he actually brings and what teams have to contend with when he's in the side, and I think he's particularly now he's being played in his position. You're starting to see why Wolves did spend a bit of money on him.
Yeah, he looks a fantastic prospect coming forward. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I mean, my thoughts going forward, I would love to see him with Fabio Silva next season. That's, I don't know, Ben, I don't think you'd be against that for your love from Fabio Silva. Tyler, again, something you guys mentioned then, we're talking about midfielders making runs into the box. We're talking about Lamina's come close to scoring a couple of times. He had one tipped over the bar. Now, João Gomez, for me, the holding midfielder, he scored a great goal at Southampton. Obviously, we're there for that magical moment. But again, he's made that run. When did we get our centre midfielders, especially in the two, the difference it makes the movement, two midfielders like that getting into the box? You've said it all season, Tyler. Get players into the box, get forward, and you'll see the best from Wolves.
It's bonkers, isn't it? But I'm going to say that we look a better side without Neves in it on the two games we've seen. Neves is the best player I've ever seen, but you're telling me the balance isn't better. They're playing with the freedom because they don't have to pass it to Neves, and then Neves has to ping 180 yards. They're just playing, and you can almost see like the shackles have been let off a little bit. They're just playing, and Neves is brilliant. He's world class. I genuinely think he gets in any team. But if you'd have said we're going to beat Chelsea and Brentford, not concede, look dangerous, play front foot, aggressive football, would have been a bit surprised, wouldn't we? So,
yeah,
Lamina's almost gone on a level. I said a few weeks ago, he seems to have sort of stagnated, but the last two, he's just gone on again, hasn't he? And genuine box-to-box midfielder. I didn't know we had that quality sort of around the box, really. He nearly scored against Chelsea. Great effort against Brentford. Bombing forward before Costa scored. I know it's probably going to come up later about the debate with Neves, but I thought them two were outstanding, and for me, they keep their place. Absolutely.
Well, we've got a whole section on Ruben Neves because social media has been full of the performances. I know Ben messaged me last week when we talked about it. He's definitely going to have an opinion on that as well. But I still think there'll be a place for Ruben Neves on Saturday, regardless, and I still think he'll keep the holding midfielders as well. But Nocky, a couple of weeks ago, we were at Forest. Neves got. Did he get booked? Did he get booked at Forest? Yeah, Neves get booked at Forest. We struggled to get a point there. Who'd have believed that a couple of weeks on, from a miserable 1-1, a fortunate 1-1, Wolves would have kept 2 clean sheets and now probably been a win off safe.
I mean, it's not rocket science, is it? You play your best players in the strongest positions where they're comfortable and you're more likely to get a decent result. And we've kept it similar for the 2 games, and I think we've been outstanding. So, yeah, it's been great to see the upturn. I was worried last week, I think, a couple of weeks ago, I think most of us were. But the way that we've just got a grip of things, and we changed the way we played, we changed the dynamic of the team. And as you said, as Ben rightly said, we're getting players forward now. Cunha looks a better player in the position that he's playing in now. He's not reliant on the goals. He can move into midfield, or he can overlap. He can do whatever he wants to do. Lemina himself, I think he's top draw. I was a little bit underwhelmed when we signed him, if I'm being honest. I didn't think he'd make much of an impact. More than happy to eat humble pie on that one, because he's got a real steel about him, and he just looks a really solid player. And João Gomez with him, they seem to complement each other really well. So we're just playing a good system now, which allows us to attack defending numbers. And I think Max Kilman as well, since he's got the armband, I think he can go one or two ways when you take over the captain's seat. He was fantastic. It was a brilliant moment where he blocked from Ivan Toney when Toney got free. He just looks really to have grasped it, and it's taken him up a level as well. So I think we've had spells this season where everyone's dipped out of form at the same time. We seem to have moved into a position now where players are getting into form at exactly the right time, and we're reaping the benefits.
Absolutely. It's been an amazing 2 weeks, 2 wins, 2 clean sheets, and scored 2 goals in a game as well, in one of them as well. Quite incredible stuff compared to what we've been used to recently. Ben, I want to talk about the goals. Just your view on that opening goal. For me, there was some nice interplay, a little back heel flick, probably a bit of fortune on the way. But again, if you don't put yourself in that position, you're not going to get the opportunity.
Yeah, but how many times have we watched a ball get crossed in the box, and there's one player surrounded by no one else, and like teams get fortunate goals because they commit players forward. Like, we're not the only team in the world to have scored, a goal that's deflected in off someone or something like that. Like, we've almost conditioned ourselves that Wolves fans have to think every goal's got to be like from 25 yards into the top corner. We just don't score that many like ugly goals because we don't have players in positions to score ugly goals. For me, the first goal is just all about Costa. Just the way that he brings the ball down, turns, he holds the ball long enough before laying it out wide to Gomez. Because there was another pass on for him a little bit sooner if he wanted to take that. He skipped that pass, went straight out wide, carried on his run. You saw him hold back a little bit on the edge of the box as well, rather than just. We also see players that just want to run straight for goal, and he sort of held back, let the 2 defenders pull away from him. And yeah, his first touch weren't good, but he's still getting for that second one, and he's 8 yards out. If the Brentford player doesn't get there first, he's probably scoring anyway. But yeah, I just thought that first goal was just all about Costa for me. I just thought it was supreme, like centre forward play.
Yeah, at what point did we ever think we were going to see Diego Costa pick the ball up on the halfway line, turn and run at the defence? That's not something I was expecting of him. For me, he looks as lean and as fit. Now, whether it's I'm sort of romanced by his goal and I've seen something else, but he looks really lean. He looks slim. He looks sharp. And I mean, there's questions later on talking about what's he doing next season, because that's, as you said, Ben, that's a complete centre forwards game. He's linked the play. He scored a goal. You could see how much it meant to him. But yeah, fantastic, absolutely delighted. Nocky, go on, Tyler.
Big credit to Toty as well for the cross, because the amount of times we've all been there where Wolves players just flashed it or it's gone miles. He was calm.
He's found him,
and he's pulled it back and he's picked him out. And we've all probably, we'd all admit he technically doesn't look the best footballer in the squad. But that was a great pick.
Makes some good decisions.
If Aiton or Real Breno were doing that, I would be raving about them. So I just wanted to mention, if he didn't just flash it, he picked him out really nicely, I thought.
Yeah, that's a fair call. And I mean, we're going to go through the team again because that seemed to be quite popular last week. But yeah, it's a solid performance again. Just move on to the second goal, Nocky. Again, I mean, you talked about Matheus Nunes didn't have an electric game, and then he was doing okay, but 1 goal, 1 assist in 2 games, playing in what looks like the best position for him if he's probably not going to get in centre midfield.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke last week about how he carries the ball and how he glides across the surface, and he did it again, didn't he? The movement was absolutely superb, and the confidence to not only take the player on but continue into the penalty area. And we got a little bit fortunate. The ball into the penalty area wasn't probably the best, but if Hwang doesn't commit and run into the near post, he doesn't get a tap in, does he? So again, you're committing players into the box and you'll get your rewards for it. But I don't mind them kind of goals at all. You haven't got to whack them in from 20 yards. Haven't got to be volleys or overhead kicks. The ball in the back of the net's the ball in the back of the net. And when you're scoring goals like that, where you're committing defenders and you're getting into the area, it doesn't make a difference how they go in. And he wasn't at his best. He didn't have a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, but he wasn't at the level he was against Chelsea, I think it'd be fair to say. But a moment of magic like that, and he kills a game stone dead for us. So he's looking like the player that we hoped he would be when we signed him, and it can only be positive for us.
Absolutely. It's a bit of credit as well for Hwang. I mean, he's had lots of criticism from Wolves and particularly on this podcast, but if you're making that intelligent run to put yourself in that positional awareness is everything. If you're in that position to pick that up and score, credit to Hwang.
Works his socks off as well. Absolutely works his socks off when he comes in. And again, more than that.
I think we have to say again, in terms of the game management from the manager, the changes that he did, he got them absolutely bang on. Just when the game was never really turning, because as Ben said earlier on, Wolves were controlled most of that game, well, not all of it, but most of it. So the tactical, again, we've called him an elite manager. That's how elite managers manage games. Tweaks at the right time, changes at the right time, and impacts on your substitutes. He can't do much more than that. I want to run through the team again, but just starting off, Tyler. I mean, Jose Sarr, again, it's a pretty easy one, isn't it?
Yeah, he made one exceptional save towards the end, didn't he?
Tipped onto the bar, I think, yeah.
You can't really criticise his shot stopping and his general goalkeeping. He still has to improve his feet, doesn't he? There's still times I think he could maybe shift it or find a better pass, or he's a bit clumsy, he kicks it out of play, but didn't have a lot to do, but what he did well, and that save was very good. So, yeah, you're sort of looking at a 7 out of 10, aren't you, really?
It's incredible, really. He's probably had to make one proper save in 2 games and one of the shot at him. Now, for 180 minutes of football against Brentford and Chelsea, that's an incredible stat, and that's a credit to those in front of him as well. Moving on to the defence, Ben, our new left-back, who'd have thought it? Certainly not me. I thought Toti Gomez, for me, was going to be, at best, a left-sided centre-back in a 3. Did quite, I think, memory serves me correct, he came into the team away at Brentford last year, put a rotten tackle in, but it got rescinded for a red. Wolves went in to win the game 2-1. He's been in and out, but he's never really let Wolves down, and this almost looks like a stroke of genius from Lopetegui, Ben, putting him at left-back.
Yeah, I can be brutally honest, because I think, when was the first game that he played there? Was it Chelsea or was it Forest?
He played left back at Forest.
Forest came in, yeah.
So it was sort of in that little phase where Lopetegui didn't look like he knew what his strongest team was, and it was another like, what are we doing here? Like, and then like I even had text messages on Saturday like, it's a good side, but I'd probably still have Bueno in there. But you have to say, like, he's not
2
really
clean sheets.
He's not ever had a bad game for Wolves, really, and he's strange because I can't remember who said it, but he doesn't look like a technically brilliant footballer, but he clearly is, and he's doing a really, really good job. And Wolves look significantly more compact and solid when he's in the team. I don't think you can really take him out because the argument against it would be that it sort of limits what you can do creatively, but he's set up a goal like with a really good delivery into the box. So it's not doing that. He's getting forward. So there's not really an argument for him coming out the side at this point. And it's his shirt now until he loses it.
First and foremost, though, your job as a defender is to keep a clean sheet. And I mean, at Forest, he was caught for the goal, but it was a slick move, and Johnson's a good player. But the week after, then he's pocketed Raheem Sterling. Now, whatever you think of Raheem Sterling, that's a guy that's won multiple trophies. That's an international footballer. Toti did not give him a kick. So, as you said, Ben, absolutely credit to him. Nocky, moving on to Captain Fantastic Maximilian Kilman.
Yeah, and we spoke about him earlier, didn't we? I think he's been brilliant since he got the armband. I think playing with Craig Dawson helps. He liked that figure of having Conor Cody next to him last season. It gave him a little bit of support. He doesn't come across as a particularly loud personality, so I think he needs that little bit of a comfort blanket next to him. He's getting that from Dawson, but he's making the right decisions. He's getting forward when he needs to. He's defending really well. He's organising. He looks like the player that we were talking about getting an England cap last season, doesn't he? He's got that element of control back about him now. He had a little bit of a slump, which you do get with young players, but he looks like he's moved on again. So yeah, for me, player that keeps clean sheets against Chelsea and Brentford comfortably without really having too much to do. I think you've got to look at the positioning and everything they've done to make that happen. So yeah, really pleased with him.
He looks like now he's made the transition properly from being a centre-back in a 3 from a centre-back in a 2. And as you rightly said, Conor Cody's a leader and he did fantastic things. So when he's got that person next to him, but now he's got bargain of the season, Craig Dawson in next to him, it's allowing Max to play the football as well as defending. Fantastic block against Tony. And the way him and Dawson pretty much dominated Tony apart from that one effort near the end was fantastic. Tyler, Craig Dawson does exactly what it says on the tin.
Oh, you stole my line.
Sorry, mate.
I'm going to get the words out properly this week, but without going on about it, that's all you need to say about him. So it sums him up as a footballer perfectly, doesn't it? You know exactly what you're going to get week in, week out. And yeah, him and Costa have just brought that little bit of housery, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Where we would have previously probably got bullied by teams like that, and we would have. But we've got characters now. We've got leaders. Them two, Lamina, they stand up to that challenge now. And I thought he was superb again. Puts his head and his feet in where people don't want to. Solid as a rock, yeah.
Fantastic and an absolute bargain. I think Dawson's 32, is he, Ben? 33 next birthday. I think he's about that. So hopefully, there's absolutely no reason why we can't be looking at Dawson for another year or two, because in terms of football age, he's not particularly old. Nocky, on to Nelson Semedo. A transformed footballer under Lopetegui. 7 out of 10, doesn't really get skinned. We'd probably like to see a little bit more going forward from him. But if you're keeping clean sheets and winning games, it doesn't really matter. Yeah,
he's in the Wolves form of his career at the moment. I think Lopetegui's brought the best out of him. His decision-making defensively last season was questionable. I think he got caught out of position, he got beat a little bit too regularly, but now he just doesn't seem to have a fault in his game. He seems really solid. No one gets past him. He does get forward, probably not as much as he used to, as you rightly said, but when you've got players ahead of you like Nunes with the pace he's got, you probably don't need to. But he's just doing a really, really solid job for us at the moment. He's very similar to Totti, really. I think he's restricted how far he commits, but he's learned a new element to his game of controlling the ball through midfield and holding defensive lines, and he doesn't get caught out, and that's the most important thing about him now. He's not getting caught out in the way he was, and he looks like a top quality right back, and the 40 million we spent on him, he's kind of justifying that at the moment.
Yeah, it looks like a settled back four. Wolves don't really look like out of position or they're being stretched. 2 fantastic performances from the keeper and the defence, who have, in reality, made things look quite easy against some very, very good footballers. Ben, moving on to the midfield, Mateus Nunes, goal and assist in his last 2 games. Our new 6'1" Portuguese-Brazilian winger.
Yeah, look, we're going to come on to Neves, and like Tyler said, he's one of the best players I've ever seen play for Wolves. Well, he is the best player, but there's a reason why teams will snap up Nunes quicker than they snapped up Neves, and it's because he changes games, and he changes games in the last 2 weeks with just moments of brilliance. But it's just the way that he can turn a game just with a run. Like, Wolves need that sometimes. Last couple of years, it's been so lethargic, and when it's slow, the crowd struggle to get involved in it. Whereas he's the type of player, he's a little bit like a Traoré type player, where he'll turn 30 yards from goal and he's capable of running it 40 yards. He's almost like a mixture of those 2 types of players, because he's still technically really good. I know he has weeks where he looks like he has worn the wrong boots, but like he also has that little just turn of skill where he can just take your breath away, and that's why teams are sniffing around him the way they are, because he is capable of that. And I think he's struggled a lot because he's come to a team that have struggled a lot, and he's been expected to do things that he's that's not part of what he's got to offer. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm just desperate that we get a second season of it, because I don't think we'll get more than 2. But I'd love us to have 1 full season of it, because it'd be a shame if we get 2 months of it. Because I personally think we will get a second season of it. I think we'll probably price out enough teams that it'll stay for another season. I think next year you could see like a really, really special season.
What just on him then, Ben? What would it take then for Wolves to sell Matheus Nunes in the summer?
60.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone's going to pay that, are they, at this point in time?
There's no
Premier League tax.
To me, there's no benefit of Wolves spending that 45 million and selling for 50, because he hasn't. You can't even say, oh, he's come for a season, but look what he's given Wolves.
He's just paid his wages, yeah.
Yeah, and the agreement that was in place with Liverpool, they've already got rid of that. So whoever is going to buy him, whether that is Liverpool, I don't see that Liverpool are going to spend that much money on Nunes. I don't think it's the right point for them, and I think teams will just want to see another year, because there's enough question marks where you wouldn't want to spend 60 million on him yet. And I think that'll work to Wolves' benefit, because I think in another year's time you're looking at, he might be worth close to like 70, 75 million. So Wolves just play their cards right here, because there's a massive transfer coming down the line, in my opinion.
Yeah, fantastic footballer, as you say, game changer. We talked about it before. We talked about it last week, but the guy's deceptively quick. Because he's 6'1", he's a big guy, and when he's gliding through, the strength he's got as well. He's the guy. He's so mobile and talented, but wide right, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 games. More of that, please. And I think that's the position for him for the rest of the season. Nocky, of course, you can have the reducer in Joe Gomez, but whilst teams look at Matheus Nunes, there is bargains to be had for 14, 15 for the likes of Joe Gomez, who are playing in South America. Again, a great game, celebrating his tackles, and just a fantastic addition. Just someone that loves retrieving the ball, and the guy can play as well.
Yeah, we talk about Nunes having a special season next year. I think you could see something special from Joe Gomez as well, because he really seems to be settling in. He's doing the dirty work, isn't he? He's picking the ball up, he's breaking up tackles, he's getting stuck in. He loves a reducer. I love a reducer. So he's just a pain in the backside to play against, I would think, because he's always at them. He doesn't give them any space in midfield. And in Premier League, if you shut down those midfield areas and dominate it, it's more likely than not you're going to win the game. So he can finish as well. We saw that at Southampton. I think he will add more goals to his game next season. He just looks, he's an absolute bargain at that price. For, what was it, 15 odd million quid Premier League money? It's a bang average player for 15 million quid these days. So if you get someone with that,
some Championship teams are playing 15 million pounds for
forwards. Absolutely, yeah. But you get a player who's got this level of potential, who other clubs were looking at for that kind of price. It's an absolutely phenomenal deal, and it's took him a while to get in. I can understand why. I think Lopetegui wanted to blood him into it first, get him used to where he was now, because he's only a young lad, and now he's got his opportunity. He's got the shirt similar to Totti. I don't see anyone taking it off him at the moment.
Absolutely. Mario Lemina again. Mario Lemina, up and down, into tackles. Like Gomez, he wants to win the ball back. He wants a battle. He wants to fight you to win the ball back. Getting forward, unlucky not to score. As you mentioned, he'd sort of gone off the ball a bit, but now this partnership in midfield just looks like it works.
Yeah, I was sort of a bit with Nocky. When we signed him, everyone was like, steady, decent signing, probably not one to get too excited about. But I think, as I said at the start, he just seems to have come into his own the last 2 games with Neves not being there. At Forest away, he was almost tucking in like a third centre back.
Overcrowded.
Yeah, they were all getting it. Well, we had about 8 playing, didn't we, against Forest in centre mid, so it was natural. But I probably didn't realise he was this good. But like what Nocky said, he's a genuine box-to-box midfielder. There doesn't seem to be much he doesn't have. He's neat and tidy in a short game. He wins the ball back. Got a decent shot on him. Good.
Very strong.
Like I said, you can't fault him for the last couple of games, and I thought he was superb against Saturday. And the two of them just work together. And I think we said it, sometimes you sort of stumble across a formation or a team or a formula, and I think that's what he's done. I think he stumbled across Totti at left back, and we look solid. And he's had to play these two together with Neves' suspension, and we look a lot better. You used to hammer us, Ryan, didn't you, for having brilliant technicians, but no legs, no mobility, no engine.
It killed us.
Totally changed.
Yeah.
We've now got two people who probably aren't technically as great as Neves and Matinho, but they make up for that in work ethic.
They do not give anyone a chance to breathe a second, and if you give them a chance, they will clatter you, and they're right on the ball as well. So yeah, this has worked out well having this one for you, Ben. Pablo Sarabia is a man that's split the.
I give him knocker.
No, absolutely can't. Pablo Sarabia, he's split the podcast. Now, I think there's an incredibly talented footballer there. He wasn't bad on Saturday. It certainly wasn't his best game.
Did he play Saturday?
Oh, there we go. Nocky's letting it all out. What was your take on his performance? And then going out a bit extra, what have you made of him so far?
I think he looks nice. Like if that's always my review, like he looks quite nice when he gets the ball. He's clearly a good technician. He takes it. He does all those things that people who are
Spanish internationals
snobbier about football than me rate really highly. You know, he's efficient and he takes up nice positions and he uses the ball. I don't really know what he does. Like for me watching, I haven't got to grips with it yet. There is a player there. I'm not sure Wolves are getting what needs to be out of it.
I think jokes aside, he makes us look a good team.
Yeah.
The best performances have been when he's in the side.
Yeah.
And I know Knocker's laughing, but he does. He's not going to get the ball and do an Adama and look like he's beat three people. But the good performance have been when he's in the side. Liverpool, the last Brentford, Fulham away, Tottenham at home when he came on. Probably our four best performances, and he's played in all of them.
That's a fair point.
He was the first player taken off on Saturday, wasn't he? I think he's technically a very tidy player, but for me, if everybody's fit, he's way down the pecking order, in my opinion.
Behind who?
I think he's behind Hwang. I think he's behind Pedence. I know he's not. Of course, Hwang's come on, scored himself a goal. I just don't see anything from Sarabia that makes me think he's...
Ben, and this is why I gave him to you.
So you say he would have scored it, but he wouldn't have got into that position because he'd have been too far out on the left. Whereas Hwang was cutting inside. I just think
Hwang was playing up front at that time. Maybe he was. Yeah, he was coming off the boom. But
no, you're right. He's a talented player. He's clearly a talented player. I wouldn't dispute that, and maybe we'll see more from him next season. But I'm with Ben. I just don't see what he brings. When you look at everybody else, you see what Nunes brings, you see what Pedence brings, you see what Costa brings. I don't see what impact he makes at this moment.
I've just named those performances when we were at our best and he was playing.
Well, but was that because of him or despite him?
This is what I mean about, like, he does things that I don't think are that easy to spot.
Exactly.
But he must be doing things that help Wolves look better.
You don't play for Spain.
I'm not sure what that is, but unless it is just a coincidence, because it's not a massive sample size, but Wolves do look a better team when he's in it, but it's not necessarily... But you wouldn't say, Wolves look really good today because Sarabia looks good. Yeah. It's quite a difficult one to like put my finger on, but Wolves do seem a better team when he's in the lineup, but not because of him. So I don't know what that means. It might just be complete coincidence.
Yeah, Nocky's going to hammer for this afterwards anyway. But moving on to the two forwards. Before we move on to the two forwards, you're listening and watching episode 60 of the Wolves Report with Mirror Football's Ben Husband, Chris Tyler, Mark Knock, and myself, Ryan Leicester. The show is recorded live, and for a live score from Ellen Road, it's Leeds United 1, Liverpool 5. Very interesting scoreline there indeed. I thought Leeds were safe after they beat Wolves, but you just never know. So yeah, interesting. Moving on to the two forwards from the weekend. Who's up next? Was it you, Nocky? I think we'll give you. You'll have a reducer, so you can have Diego Costa.
I'm in love with the man. I'm absolutely in love with him. He's
in a relationship.
He's everything I hoped he'd be. He was, he's took. I think the lads touched on it earlier. It took him a while to get fit, and I think you could see that he didn't seem to have the legs. He didn't seem to have the touch or the movement. Whereas now he looks fitter. Even the goal, he picked it up from the halfway line, drove forward as Chris rightly said, picked the right pass, didn't pick the first pass, and he's just got that brain about him that you really need by your focal point up front. And in the second half, he burst past, I think it was Cunha, and pointed where he wanted the ball and forced a save from the goalkeeper. So I think it was a complete centre forwards performance. It was the kind of performance that we were getting from Jimenez when he had Jota and Adama playing wide of him, and he just gave you that feeling that he was in control of it. And for me, I think the way he played forced Brentford back 5 or 10 yards because they couldn't live with him. They looked bullied. They looked like he was really getting at them, and he was in their ear. I could see it from where I was sat. He was in their ear. He was nudging them. He was just doing everything horrible that you'd want him to do. And the fact he got his goal as well. And yeah, he was fortunate. We've already said that, but he still put it in the back of the net, hasn't he? Which a Wolves striker hasn't done for over a year. So I like him. I'd love to think that he can keep his form up now, score another maybe 2-3 goals between now and the end of the season, and then we'll have a decision to make at the end of that. But really pleased with him. Solid centre forward display.
Absolutely. Maybe the thought of the centre backs being headbutted again was in their minds, and they weren't that interested in that. So maybe that was thinking about it. Last but not least, Matheus Cunha, Tyler, and Matheus Cunha for Tyler. Sorry.
Yeah, easy for you to say, Ryan. Well, it's not rocket science, is it? Nocky called it day one. He's not a number 9. He never has been a number 9. Stick him up front with someone, and you get a totally different player, don't you? Ben covered it earlier. He's the Jota-like player. Probably a nicer version of Jota, isn't he? Because he's always smiling and seems happy. But he can go in behind. He can come short. He can turn. He's not afraid to shoot. He can lay balls on for people. Like Knocker said, play the good players in the right positions and you'll get the best out of them. And it's not a coincidence, is it? Since he's gone up top with Costa, they look useful. And I said last week, that's my front two now for the rest of the season.
I think there's only one place, Tyler, up for grabs, and that's probably the Sarabia Pedence who plays there. That's it.
Don't mention him again.
That's I'm not going to. That's why I give it to Ben, and Nocky just couldn't help it. He just couldn't. Nocky's got his new microphone. He's jumped in and he's absolutely given us a beating. You're watching episode 60 of the Wolves Report with Ben Husband, Mark Knott, Chris Tyler, and myself, Ryan Leicester. Now, every week we put questions out, ask for your questions on Twitter, and there's been loads again. So thank you as always. One question kept coming up in particular regarding Ruben Neves. So instead of answering all the questions on Ruben Neves, I thought we'd talk about Ruben Neves now. When I spoke to Ben last week to book him in for the show and spend the summer budget on getting his attendance tonight, we said Ben would certainly said he'd have something to say if there was another win. So Ruben Neves, a lot of people are saying we can't start Neves next week. Other people are saying we have to start Ruben Neves next week. As we've all said on here, Ruben Neves is probably the best footballer I've ever seen play for Wolves. It probably was Moutinho in that first season, but I think Neves has kicked on again since then. And for pretty much the last 2 seasons, it's been Ruben Neves that's dragged Wolves out of the mud. So Wolves have a huge decision to make on Saturday. I have a solution where everyone plays, but I want to hear your take on if Ruben Neves starts and should he start.
So I think that first of all, Wolves have been better when he's not been in the team, but it is still a really small amount of games that we're judging that on. It's only a couple of games where he's come out, and they were both similar games in the respect that Chelsea and Brentford were both happy to come and have a go at Wolves as well. And you don't know whether that suited the fact that Neves isn't in the team. There was a point in the first half which showed the difference, and I think it was Gomez on the ball. Lamina was to his right, then Nunes was out far on the right. And for me, if Neves is on the picture, that ball's going straight out to Nunes on his chest, and then there's 2 Brentford players around him. What happened was one midfielder passed to the other, who brought another Brentford player out, and then it went wide to Nunes, who's then one-on-one. And that was just like one little example where Wolves looked a more cohesive team because they weren't trying to skip that pass. I'm not sure they still have. When Wolves had Doherty and the footballer formerly known as Johnny Otter at fullbacks and wing-backs, then those types of balls worked. It was Cody spreading it. It was Neves spreading it. When they've got ball carriers in there now that can move the ball forward with it at their feet. And I need to see how Wolves look against the team that are going to come and sit in, because it might still be a better option than Neves plays. My big question is how would you feel if either Lamina or Gomez come out the side, and I think we'd be pretty disappointed with either of them coming out the 11.
If I was one of those, I'd be very disappointed.
And you don't change the formation. You can't change the formation now and go back to having 3 centre midfielders.
No.
And jeopardising what's been happening going forward, because that's why Wolves were in the position that they're in, because they're not creating enough chances. They're not on the front foot. So for me, you're either saying we drop Lamina or Gomez, or you start to think of like horses for courses and when Neves is a better option than what they've got. And I just want to say he is like the best player I've ever seen play for Wolves. So this isn't saying that he's turned into a bad player, because obviously he hasn't. But whether he suits this current Wolves team as well as the midfielders that are in there, I think that's the question that we need to answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful predicament to be in. Imagine having your best player and your captain out, and then putting on 2 of your best performances without him. It is a wonderful. It's a privileged position that we've never been in. It's such a positive problem to have. Nocky, what I would say though, that's probably worked in Wolves' favour. I think these 2 wins have been more about Wolves playing with 2 forwards than they have playing without Neves. I think that may have benefited Wolves more than being without Neves.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've also been allowed to play midfield, which other teams haven't done. I mean, you play a Forest or you play a Leeds, they're going to pack the midfield area, whereas Chelsea and Brentford gave us plenty of space. But I mean, I'm with you too. I think Neves is the best player I've ever seen at Wolves, and I very much doubt I'll see anyone technically better than him. But he's, in a sense, he's a victim of his own quality, because we have to give him the ball. We have to get it to him. He's our option. He's our quarterback. And he's going to look for that ball all the time. He's going to look for the win backs. He's going to look for the through ball. Whereas we have had to play a slightly different way. It's similar to when Adama's on. We become quite one-dimensional at times, where we're looking for that ball over the top to find the run. It's similar with Neves. We get the ball, we give it to him. Whereas we've now given Lamina and João Gomez a little bit more responsibility to go and try and play midfield. So it's such a difficult one, isn't it? I don't see how he gets back in without us changing the formation. I don't see how that would work. And if he changes the formation and we go and get beat at Leicester, there's going to be questions asked. If he keeps the formation and we get beat, I think people would understand how that's happened, because you shouldn't really change a winning team. But I can't believe I'm even in the mindset that you wouldn't bring Neves in for every minute of every game. But I just think the way it's working at the minute, and additionally, we're in a situation now where we may lose him at the end of the season. So if we're now maybe 1 win and a draw away from being safe, if he's going to go, and the club I'm sure will know one way or another what he's going to do, is it maybe time that we do keep him out and look at what we're going to do next season? Is it going to be Lamina and Gomez? Who's it going to be in that area? Is it going to be Nunes dropping in? Maybe we look at that and think, well, if he's going to go, let's start planning for next season.
Let's stay at first, Nocky, but absolutely agree what you're saying. Tyler, Ruben Neves, best footballer we've ever seen. Scored some of the best goals, given us some of the best moments. He has been the prince of Wolves' rise back to the Premier League.
Yeah, but I think it's the easiest decision in the world. There's no way for me he comes back in the side. No way whatsoever. Like Ben said, you can't drop either of them pair. We've all agreed that Toti's earned his place and he's undroppable now. And it's the same for those 2. They can't be dropped. And what an option to have on the bench. Neves and Moutinho just on the bench. If you do go a goal or 2 up and you bring them on to control the game, you've got to think about the bigger picture, haven't you? And I just don't see how you can drop either of Lamina and Gomez. And yeah, it sounds a bit weird saying it. But for me,
it's weird we're having this conversation. But honestly, my timeline has been hammered with this, and it needs talking about, because it's such a brilliant predicament.
We aren't Neves FC either, so
exactly.
Wolves are still in a position where they need to get points to stay in the Premier League. It's getting close now that we're safe, but we aren't a football club that are just built around getting the best out of Neves and making sure that he has an enjoyable last few months. And he's, like we said, he's been an unbelievable servant and spent probably 2 or 3 seasons longer than any of us thought that he would. But at the same time, Wolves getting results is more important than that. So there's got to be a decision. Wolves aren't going to win the last 7. So there's probably going to be an opportunity at some point where Lopetegui can go, all right, they've lost that game. Neves can come back in. But you can't do that off the back of the last 2 weeks for me. I just think what message is that sending?
Absolutely. I agree. And I know I'm not really talking about the Leicester game now. But I think the position that's up for grabs and a slight tweak is the Sarabia Podence role. Kuna could potentially go wide. Neves could come in front of them. Ben, honestly, I see.
We've seen that. Though. It doesn't work.
I'm only saying what I think you'll do. I don't see Ruben Neves being left out. I just don't see it. Now, I personally think it should be the same. Whether it's Podence, whether it's Sarabia, don't really mind. One of those two, but the rest shouldn't change. However, I do think Neves will come back in, and I think you're coming back in for Sarabia. I think Neves will be more advanced. Kuna left, Matheus Nunes right.
That's ever worked. You just...
But like I said, if he does that, he's setting himself up for criticism. Because Knocker hit the nail on the head. If you go with the same 11 and you lose, it's like, well,
we made a change after the last win, though, Tyler.
Yeah, but the formation, the style, nothing changed. It was just the like for like. So if you're going to bring Ben's right, if you're going to bring Neves in, it's for one of those two.
That's
bringing him in for a forward. No way.
That's the only excusable thing I could say. If he changes it for Lamina or Gomez, I won't necessarily agree with it, but I'll understand it. If he changes the formation, I'll be furious because I think that's a really bad decision.
I've
criticised Sarabia as you heard, but I'm not.
Wow, here we go.
Neves. I'm not swapping him for Neves in that position.
Yeah, that's Tyler.
It's the system we need to continue with. The personnel need to fit around the system for me.
Absolutely, and that I agree with all three of you. I'm just creating debate.
I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way.
But I don't. I want it to be the same team, Podence, Sarabia, not fuss which one of those two.
Wasn't it? It was disgusting.
It was disgusting. He went there not to lose. We had one shot.
We must know that, and he's changed it. We've been more positive the last two.
Honestly, wait until we see the team on Saturday.
Oh, no, you're probably right, but I'll be better. I'll be fuming.
But that's the point, though. Tyler's made a good point.
How can you be in bed when you come into Leicester with us?
But Tyler's made a good point, hasn't he? Because we were horrible at Forest. We managed one shot on goal. We've played Brentford, who are having a really good season. We've had 9 shots on target. So the quality's there to get into those attacking positions.
Yeah, I agree.
We just got to keep the system that works.
No, I agree. I'm just creating debate.
You also don't want Neves to come in now and the formation gets changed and Wolves go back to being poor. And then the last impressions that people have of him at Wolves are that Wolves do look a worse side when he's in and they go back to being a boring... Wolves have been so boring. And the last 2 weeks, they haven't been.
Yeah.
And I don't want his final months of being at Wolves of people going, well, why are they changing the formation just so he can play?
Yeah, it's a fair point. Quick question, though, guys. We're on Ruben Neves. And this is a really interesting point. Now, lots of teams would like Ruben Neves in the summer. But there aren't many teams that are going to get Ruben Neves in the summer. I personally don't think he's going to move to another Premier League team. I think it's one of the Spanish big two or PSG. I don't see anyone else. What happens if a club comes in, no club comes in for Ruben Neves that he wants, and he's got a year left on his contract?
He's not looking for mega money, though, is he? I mean,
what, 40 million now with a year left?
Yeah, but surely anyone in the Premier League is going to take a punt on him for that kind of money.
But what if he doesn't? I honestly don't see Neves going to the Premier League team. I don't see it. I just got it's just a gut feeling I've got. I don't see it. Ruben Neves had his heart set on Barcelona for years now.
It was
it might not have, well, I think the transfer was supposed to happen, but they've got no money. They've got to find, Ben will probably know more of this, I think Barcelona have got to find 150, 200 million euros to clear it so they can sign players. He's not going to go to Barcelona. So what happens if there isn't a suitor? What if only people come in for Ruben Neves that he doesn't want to join?
For 30 million, Liverpool would go for him, Man United would go for him, Chelsea would probably go for him.
You can see him in that United midfield.
You could easily see him again alongside Casemiro for United there.
Definitely.
Easily. For 30 million.
That makes me feel sick.
But that's the more logical move, really, that he's going to go to a Premier League team. Unless like, I don't know, someone like Roma because of Mourinho or something like that and brings him over there. Or I don't see there being loads of options for him outside the Premier League, and that's where I think he's going to go.
Interesting, great debate. I mean, ideally, I would absolutely love Ruben Neves to sign an extension and stay. I don't see it, but never say never. You just never know in football. Let's move on to your questions. You're listening to episode 60 of the Wolves Report with Ben Husband, Mark Knock, Chris Tyler and myself, Ryan Leicester. The Wolves Report is now available on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and of last week, Spotify as well. Let's do some quick fire questions. We're almost 50 minutes in. Some of these will overlap what we've talked about already, but let's go through them anyway. Do we keep Costa for another season, release Jimenez and sign another forward, but have a backup like Costa seems sensible? Nocky?
Yeah, well, it depends what he does between now and the end of the season, but I think for just pure personality, I think I'll keep him around. I think he offers something to the young players. Jimenez has probably sent us a message now in terms of his Twitter page that he's on his bike. So yeah, bringing another forward, Costa's back up, Kolasinac when his knee recovers, Fabio, maybe that's enough for us next season.
Interesting. Thank you for your question. This overlaps it a little bit, but I'd love to get your take on it as well. Tyler, press the wrong one. Let's get him back up. If the players accepted a squad role, would you give Martinez and Costa another year, considering we'll probably lose the experience of Traore, Neves, Johnny, and Raul, etc.?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't see Martinez being around next season. Similar to the debate we've just had with Neves, isn't it? Where does he get in? He's below Neves, Nunes, Lemina, Gomez. You've got Traore still. We're going to have 6 centre midfielders. I think Martinez goes. Costa, I think, I don't know. I always think you can hold on to the people too long, to be honest. I don't know if you just shake his hand, say thanks very much, and see you later. So I personally would probably get rid of them both, if I'm honest.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, you would imagine Fabio Silva would come back with Boubacar Traore as well in the mix. Martinez, Jimenez, Costa, the best part of 250 grand, 300 grand on wages. That's a huge amount of money for potential new players to come in. Hayden, thanks for your contribution. And also thank you, Kev, for your question as well. Ben, this one's for you. This one's set up for you perfectly. Considering Silva will be joining a very different team club to the one he left, would he A, want to come back, and be as effective in the Premier League as he been out on loan? Ben, share the love for Fabio Silva.
I don't think really matters if he wants to come back or not. He still plays for Wolves at the moment.
Doesn't really have a choice, does he?
If Wolves want him to come back, then he's going to come back. He can put his arse in his hands. I think a lot of the quotes have sort of been taken out of context. He's obviously not going to say that he doesn't want to play for PSV while he's on loan there.
Of course.
And, he's going to big up how good the club is because it's obviously a massive club that he's at as well. I'm sure he'd still want to come and prove himself. He don't want to be known as that £35 million. If he goes now, he's going to go down as like one of the worst Premier League signings that there's ever been. Like he'll be in those lists, won't he? Whether that's warranted or not, it's not his fault. Wolves bought him too early. Weren't the value wasn't there? Whatever, blah blah blah. But he's surely got to want to come and make his name because I think he's ready now, and I don't think he's going to be as effective because it's a much stronger league. So he probably. I think he's mobile enough now, and I think he's put on some muscle, and I think he's making intelligent runs. You see some of the runs he makes on the highlights for his goals, and they're not runs.
He makes runs like Costa. Now, obviously, he's a lot more mobile than Costa, but as Tyler mentioned a couple of times about Costa, he makes those intelligent runs, those little darts, even if it's to open up space for a midfielder running on or an overlapping fullback. He makes those runs, and we've seen on those yes, it's not the best standard, but the guy can finish.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point on that question as well. It's a completely different team. When he came in the first time, he was essentially a battering ram. That's what the job of what Jimenez did for Wolves. He was a lot more technical than just being a battering ram. But he's been absolutely ran into the ground by Nuno. He's a Mexican version of what McCarthy did to Doyle. He's absolutely just ran him into the ground, and there's a reason why. Even once the head injury's cleared, he's not looked the same player. And I think he's exhausted because of how much work he put in. I don't think that's going to be expected of him. We're not going to play the type of wingers that are whipping in 15 crosses a game. That's not the way Lopetegui wants to play. And I think he'll be asked to do different things. And I think he'll be asked to do things that will suit his game a lot more. And I'd be interested to see what Cunha and Silva can do as a two. And I just think if I was him, I'd want to give this another go before I was giving up on it completely.
It's a different kind of team. It's a football team that's going to play attractive, technical football. Fabio Silva's a technical footballer. He wants 1-2s. He wants the step over dummy. He wants the little through balls. He's a player that fits this style of play. I hope he's given his opportunity. Duncan, thank you for your brilliant question. I'll answer this next question very briefly, and then we'll answer another question. Mike Allen asked, would Morgan Gibbs-White be better off on our bench rather than being relegated with Forest?
Who cares?
I don't think he'd get on our bench, mate.
Thanks for your question, Mike. Jake Walker asks, Mateus Nunes is going to be some footballer. Is he just realising how good he is in this league? Will he want to stay, and will Wolves want to cash in? Nocky?
I think we've kind of covered this. I think whether he wants to stay or not's a little bit irrelevant because he's on a decent deal. So will Wolves want to cash in? No. I think, as we said earlier, he's not going to be worth a huge amount of profit this season, whereas if he has a full pre-season of the Lopetegui and it's a ground running next year, we could almost double our money on him, I think. So that's probably the signing for 2 years down the line, I'd say. Thanks
for your question, Jake. Jake. Next question on here. Tyler, we have Jonah asking, do you feel the squad we have now have a closer connection like in Nuno's first years? Is Lopetegui fundamental to the squad togetherness? We've seen in the last few games, teams celebrating around each other, players celebrating tackles. It almost feels like the start of a potential career, Tyler.
Yeah, definitely. I think the second goal summed that up, didn't it? The other day, there was obviously having a bit of a laugh and jumping around. And delighted for Costa to score, delighted for Hwang to score. Yeah, I think it's a fair point. But that's what good football managers do. That's what respected, top coaches get. And there's a lot of talk about Large, wasn't there? Did he ever really have the dressing room? Maybe not. But you bring someone like Lopetegui in and they command respect and he'll bring players together. And yeah, to answer them both, yes and yes. Yeah, no brainer.
Thank you for your question there, Jonah. One final question. I think I'll let it answer itself, but Greg, regular contributor to the Wolves Report. Ben, do you think, and if hopefully Wolves stop up, during Lopetegui to use the close season to rebuild the squad and to work out a settled team, any chance of consistency in the selection? Ben?
Yeah, well, I think the first 4 months of his tenure has proved that I don't think he rated a lot of the players that were there, in my opinion. This side is getting closer to what he would like, but it's a fundamentally different side to the one that was playing in November before
Everton, yeah.
It's a very, very, very different team. And I think that's going to continue in the summer. I think this will be another really big summer. And I think we'll see a lot of senior players go. Because in my opinion, that had to happen. And I think Lage, although he was a bad appointment, he was also the person that at some point Wolves needed that gutting of the squad because it had reached the end of its cycle. And I think there had to be a manager somewhere along the way that took the hit on it. And that was Lage because he had to make that Cody call and that stuck with Cody. That hasn't got to stick with Lopetegui now. That's done.
Gibbs-White.
And that was a massive, massive call. But that also that put a lot of people off Lage straight away. And the fact that we were awful and the football was terrible and we were going to get relegated also put people off him. But they're decisions that Lopetegui hasn't had to make. So we also needed that transition. And now I think Lopetegui's a lot closer to getting what he wants. And I think you're going to see a really, really changed squad again.
Absolutely. Brilliant question, Greg, and an equally brilliant answer from Ben as well. Those are all the questions for this week, episode 60 of the Wolves Report. I've had so many questions in. A lot of them were to do with Ruben Neves. Apologies if you all didn't question it, but as always, thank you for your contribution to the show. Moving to the final bits of this week's episode now, we've got another big game on Saturday. Leicester City away, Dean Smith in charge. A team that got absolutely annihilated at Man City in the first 25 minutes, but then Leicester sort of showed a little bit of heart, whether it was Man City subbing off all their best players and slowing it down. Leicester didn't give up. But Tyler, this is still a hard game on Saturday. We know about Leicester. We know the predicament they're in. Wolves are in a much better position than they were a couple of weeks ago. What are we expecting from this game? For me, it's really hard to call. I think there's a team for me that are going to be nervous and under huge pressure, and I think Wolves need to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I agree. You'd expect Leicester with they're running out of games, aren't they? You know, they are in the mud. At some point, they've got to come out, try and play football. And I think that'll play into our hands. I think it'll be quite similar to the last two. I don't see Leicester sort of parking the bus and, stifling us, really. They're going to have to come and have a go. And we all probably admit Wolves are better when that happens, aren't they? So I expect us to go there and put on a bit of a performance, really. You know, the confidence should be flowing. We're 6 points better off. We're probably, 3-4 points away from guaranteeing safety. I think, like I said last week against Brentford, man for man, Wolves are better than Leicester City, in my opinion, and I'd expect a result from there.
Well, you'd think after 31 games that the league table probably isn't telling many lies. It's pretty, teams are probably where they are now, where they should be. And for me, with that team, it's an almost crime with that squad that Leicester where they are. Knocky, massive game on Saturday. Looking forward to travelling down there with you. What changes are you expecting? Are you making any changes? We said there'd be no changes last week. There was a change. Lopetegui loves a change.
I'd like to think not, but I think Neves is the only variable at the moment. I don't see anything else getting changed if everyone stays fit. I think it's a difficult game. I keep expecting Leicester to get clear, similar to our situation. You keep thinking they're going to be all right, but then they keep getting beat. So they've still got some quality operators in there. I think the confidence is shot. If we can get at them from the start, score an early goal, you can see us getting something out of the game. But I still think it's a difficult afternoon. But what we have done is taken the pressure off ourselves the last two results, so we can get there, maybe relax, let them come to us, and see what we can do.
Ben, you've been transformed into Julian Lopetegui. You're in charge of the weekend. How are you approaching the Leicester game?
Well, we've spoke about midfield loads, and their most dangerous player is Maddison, isn't it? So I want those two snappers in there, and I want them at his heels straight away. I don't want him sat in little pockets with room to use the ball. I want someone on him all the time. Every time he turns, I want someone breathing down his neck. So that's why for me the midfield is even more important, that you keep the two crunchers in there.
Crunchers and reducers, wonderful.
And I'd the other change I'd make, and I wanted this change made on Saturday. I'd probably start Hwang on the left, I think, and that would be my one change. I quite like him. I think under Lopetegui he's been really good, and Wolves look better when he plays.
I will hold my hands up, and it looks like Hwang is proving me and a few others on this podcast wrong. But Hwang deserved the criticism because he was very poor. He looks like a different player, as does Nelson Semedo, as does Toti Gomez. The manager is getting the best out of a lot of players that maybe we wasn't expecting.
I just want players that can score goals on the pitch. And I think he's another player that we haven't got many that look like they want to score goals. And I know he went a long time, but he's the only one in that squad that scored ugly goals, like what we were speaking about. He scored, if you think about all his goals, they've all been like 3 yards or like capitalising on a back pass, or like he scores a lot of those goals.
What about that screamer at Watford for his first goal?
Exactly. Both of them. They're absolutely. But so that
Hwang for Sarabia.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take that.
Just clarify. That's all.
Sarabia is the one that's coming out. Yeah.
I get it, but I think you do need a bit of guile and a bit of craft.
Have you got that with Nunes on the other side as well?
Potentially, but opponents of Sarabia type, they're a natural little thing. What you just said about Maddison, they're our poor man's version of that, aren't they? They try to get in the pockets and they try and get us forward. Hwang, don't doubt his work ethic, but he's not clever enough for me to come in at this stage. Just my opinion.
Interesting.
That change wouldn't annoy me. Whoever starts on the left, really. That there's not enough between them that I would particularly. Yeah.
Look at the options. You haven't even mentioned Neto, Adama. Players that before you sort of banking on. They're not in the conversation now, are they? So
positive problems. It's been a lot. I mean, I love that phrase, positive problems, when you've got proper options and dilemmas. I don't think there's any dilemmas this week. There's a problem in Ruben Neves, the best player we've ever seen, our captain, might not get in the team. What a great position to be in. So fantastic. We're at the end of the show. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your tweet questions. The show, as always, is recorded live. And as I've mentioned a few times, it will be available on Spotify tomorrow morning, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Prediction time, gentlemen. We'll start with Mr. Happy himself. That's you, Tyler. Wolverhampton Wanderers away at Leicester City. First goal scorer and prediction, please.
2-1 to Wolves. Nunes, maybe.
Flying. Nunes is absolutely flying. Nocky.
1-1. Sarabia. No, I'll go Cunha.
Ben.
3-1. Dawson to score first.
Ooh, assuming 3-1 Wolves, yeah?
I think Wolves have been 3-1.
So we've won a couple of games, and look at us, isn't it? It's beautiful, isn't it? A week ago, I was having us to lose 10-0 to. I was having Chelsea to beat us 10-0. Now I think we're going to get 3 on the spin. It's phenomenal.
Not saving the best till last, but you're going to love this. You're going to absolutely love it. I'm going to go 2-0 Wolves, and opening scorer of Ruben Neves. Thank you for watching episode 60 of the Wolves Report. Thank you to Mirror Football's Ben Husband, club captain Mark Knock, and director of football Chris Tyler. I've been your host, Ryan Leicester. If I could get the branding right and get the close, I'd close on time, but I've got the wrong button again. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope we can talk about another win next week. Up the Wolves.